Good evening, I'm Jason Vio. Katarina is away this week. Here's what's making news tonight.
Mobile Medical Support Unit has the capacity and has the ability to get into those vulnerable populations and those vulnerable communities to provide mental health.
This should have happened at the beginning of the tourism season, so definitely it's a little late, but we'll take it. We're grateful and we're happy that it finally happened. It was the right thing.
It's a dramatic impact. It's an impact right away as we're coming out of a global pandemic. This gives us the resources we need to move forward in a substantial way.
Thanks for joining us. The effects of the COVID-19 pandemic are now becoming evident in some new alarming data. The rate of self-harm in Windsor, Essex is the highest it's been in a decade. And recent numbers released from the local health unit show young girls are especially struggling. The CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa joins me now to talk more about this. So Jen, you've dived deep into the numbers. Can you break down what you've seen over the last few years?
Yeah, so the data is quite concerning. These graphs here show the number of emergency department visits and hospitalizations in Windsor, Essex, and those peak in 2021. Girls between the ages of 10 and 19 years old had the highest rate, and historically self-harm is always elevated among that group, but last year the rate was the highest it's been in 10 years. Also, since 2020, the rate of hospitalizations for self-harm for women in Windsor, Essex surpassed that provincial rate. The health unit tells me that this is likely because those cases are getting more severe, so you're seeing that people need further care. And one clinical psychotherapist in Windsor who I spoke with says she's seeing more cases of heightened depression and social anxiety among young people.
The main reason why we should be concerned actually really with the self-harm is that research is showing now that it can increase the possibility of moving to suicidal tendencies.
Now, what's interesting is that we're not really seeing that, so it's different than what we expected. Since 2017, self-harm related deaths have declined. So last year we had 35 deaths related to self-harm, and that was mostly men between the ages of 20 to 65, and that's very different in comparison to 58 deaths from 5 years ago.
So is there any explanation, Jen, for that discrepancy between high self-harm rates but lower deaths?
Yeah, the health unit didn't really have a clear answer for this. It's something that they themselves are looking into, but it did caution with this data that sometimes self-harms, it's hard to classify them. So often they can be considered accidental. So that number is likely lower than the actual amount.
Okay, and why are we seeing that sharp increase in the self-harm rates of ER visits and hospitalizations?
Well, some healthcare providers are obviously saying that it's the pandemic. It impacted young people across all different ways of life, schooling, social, home life. Ola says that self-harm is usually the result of a mental health issue that's underlying, and that can be driven by emotional dysregulation. So that is the inability to really express yourselves, relationships in that person's life. It can also be a form of self-punishment or also a call for help. But the data doesn't have a lot of context, and that's something that the health unit says it's looking into, and it's really relying on community partners to help fill in those gaps.
One of the things that we are looking at is to understand behaviors and risk factors behind these visits. The piece that we will need to continue to monitor is from the initial COVID phase, are we seeing an increase in sharpness or magnitude in 2022 and in years beyond?
So Jen, what should a parent or adult do if they worry their child is hurting themselves?
Well, at first they might be panicked. Ola says that that's natural, but it's something you need to work through to be able to go and talk to the child about what they are feeling. She said it's really not about the self-harm action itself, but more about the underlying cause. And so she recommended going to a family doctor or local resources, the local Canadian Mental Health Association branch, and the Teen Health Clinic in Windsor.
All right, thanks so much, Jen, for this important story. That's the CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa in studio tonight. And if you or someone you know is struggling, you can contact the Kids Help Phone at 1-800-668-6868 or Talk Suicide Canada at 1-833-456-4566. Ontario's health minister toured a new mobile health clinic today in Essex. The large truck will visit areas to help vulnerable people, those who need health care but may have trouble accessing it. The CBC's Dale Molnar has that story.
Now we are going to them directly with this beautiful mobile unit, so we'll be able to get right into the areas where all the social disparities are.
Essex County has partnered with about 40 different organizations, nurse practitioners, and health teams to establish this $400,000 mobile health clinic. The vehicle was built in Windsor, and the idea is to send it to vulnerable neighborhoods around the area where people are in most need of health care. The money came from the province, so the health minister got a look today at the launch.
It's a combination of vulnerable really means, do you have access to the services you need when you need them? I want to make sure that what you're doing here actually continues to serve the population the best way that they can.
Up until now, health agencies in Windsor, Essex were setting up temporary clinics, and they say those were successful.
28% of the individuals that have utilized the mobile unit said they would have went to an emergency room. And additionally, we've connected 11% of those individuals to a primary care physician or a family health team that they may not have been rostered to previously.
The health clinic provides a variety of services depending on which professionals are on board. Mental health referrals are also handled.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming.
The health minister also got a look at the $500,000 mental health and addictions response team unit. It has been operating for a year and a half, with 2 paramedics working 7 days a week, along with a social worker from Hotel du Grace Hospital who works Monday through Friday. They go out when mental health patients are discharged from hospital to help them find resources.
They check up on them. They may connect them with CMHA. They may connect them with Hotel du Grace addiction services. They may get them into the transitional center on Olette, but to make sure they are connected. And then they do follow through ongoing, not just on a day.
Crowder says the crew may go out on a 911 call and take over from ambulance once there. The mobile health clinic schedule will be published on the Windsor Essex Ontario Health Team website. It takes patients on a walk-in basis.
The mobile clinic went into service today, and the plan is to keep it going on a daily basis, maybe even on some weekends going forward. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Essex.
And while Ontario's Minister of Health visited Windsor today, CBC News asked about the Matthew Mahoney inquest that concluded on Friday. Mahoney was shot and killed by Windsor police 4 years ago. He lived with severe mental illness and had many encounters with the healthcare system before he died, a system his brother says failed him. The jury made several recommendations, including some aimed at the Ministry of Health. Those include creating a mental health advocate, publishing mental health wait times, and a task force to review mental health funding and the timeliness of care.
We have a minister tasked with exclusively looking at mental health and addictions. So our commitment is clear. I want to take a look at what the recommendation would involve. Have no doubt we are committed to making improvements in mental health and addiction services in Ontario.
And as we first told you about last week, Canada will soon bring an end to all of its COVID-19 measures at international borders. A welcome move for many as Ottawa tries to adapt to the changing reality of the pandemic. But even as the travel rules relax, officials urge all Canadians to stay vigilant. Ravi Bujikanian has that story.
We are in a much better position today than we were in 2020.
With that, the government made the case for why it's getting rid of travel-related pandemic measures. As of Saturday, no more proof of vaccination, no more use of the ArriveCan app for travelers entering Canada, and no more masking on planes or trains. Ottawa says data over the last few months has shown a key fact about the virus being brought into Canada.
It's insignificant. What explains COVID-19 now and what will explain COVID-19 in the next few weeks is the domestic situation.
The decision's welcomed by both the official opposition.
The Conservative members of Parliament, myself included, have been pressuring this government to follow medical science.
And border mayors.
I mean, this should have happened at the beginning of the tourism season. So definitely, it's a little late, but we'll take it. We're grateful. And we're happy that it finally happened. It was the right thing to do, and now we're going to hope for a recovery for next season.
But there are still warnings.
While deaths are decreasing and ICU numbers remain low, numbers of people in hospital are slow to decline and remain elevated. With contact rates increasing and more time spent indoors this fall, we could see continued growth of this trajectory.
And Ottawa hopes people will realize the pandemic isn't over, even if nobody's enforcing the rules.
So we believe that most travelers will continue to wear those masks, but there will be some travelers who will choose not to do so, and that's all right.
Just last week, WestJet was warning it's had more than 1,000 cases of passengers refusing to wear masks. The government says it could bring back mandatory restrictions if the science points to it. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
And dropping the ArriveCan app opens the door for the Windsor-Detroit tunnel bus to return. It's been off the road since March 2020 when the pandemic started. Transit Windsor says its drivers need to be trained on the route again, and that will take 8 to 10 weeks once restrictions are lifted. If all goes according to plan, the bus could be back before the end of November. Canada has slapped sanctions on Iran's so-called morality police, along with dozens of other Iranian individuals and entities. It's in response to the regime's violent crackdown on protests after the death of a young woman in police custody earlier this month. Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly used her speech at the UN General Assembly today to support the protesters.
We salute their courage and join them in sending a strong message that women's rights are human rights.
Joly says Canada wants to be a champion for women's rights around the world and stand up against the exclusion of women and girls from classrooms, businesses, and political life. She also repeated the federal government's support for a woman's right to abortion access. And people in Windsor took to the streets in protest. Dozens of people stood in silence on Sunday, holding signs calling for a free Iran. They said it's been hard to even connect with family because of internet disruptions.
Because every woman everywhere in the world should have the right to choose the freedom to what they want to wear and what they want to say. And I think that we should send a message to all the people that the freedom is not for granted. They shouldn't take the freedom for granted, and they should fight for the freedom for every person in the world.
Our heart is breaking each and every second. We are suffocating, but we are doing our best to be able to let people in Iran know that we are with them.
Fiona blew in and out of Atlantic Canada on the weekend, leaving a trail of destruction. At least one person is dead and hundreds others are displaced. Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey, who surveyed some of the damage today, called the devastation unbelievable. And across the region, power outages and fuel shortages are making a bad situation even worse. Alison Northcott has those details.
Remnants of Josh Savory's home and belongings are scattered everywhere. His house in Port aux Basques was hit by a powerful storm surge and began to collapse.
It's weird to see your house everywhere in shambles when, you're used to seeing it as it stood, nice, pristine, it was your home.
Fiona left a trail of damage across Atlantic Canada. At least one person was killed, swept away by the sea. Homes and businesses were damaged or destroyed. Thousands remain without power.
We recognize that this is not a one-day thing. This won't be a one-month rebuild. This won't maybe not even be a one-year rebuild. But we will be there for every single phase.
All of it overwhelming for Paula Keeping, who lost her home and everything in it.
You can't even tell where my house was. There's nothing there, only rock. That's it. There's no foundation, nothing.
In Nova Scotia, schools and businesses are closed. Cape Breton was one of the hardest hit areas.
32 years of owning a house and putting your heart and soul into it. And a couple of hours, it's gone.
Through it all, in many communities, neighbors are helping each other.
The communities really come together, as they always do. Cape Breton is so famous for that, and we're very thankful.
On Prince Edward Island, people lined up for gas. Officials urged residents to stay off the roads as crews clear them of debris. The province is continuing to assess the damage.
It comes as no surprise that the damage is from tip to tip and across all sectors.
The storm also hit New Brunswick and Les Îles de la Madeleine, Quebec, where some areas were evacuated during the storm, the force of it visible from the damage left behind. Residents who live where Fiona hit hardest say the storm was unlike anything they've seen before, and the extent of the damage beyond what many had imagined. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Windsor's Jewish community is ringing in its new year today and tomorrow. It's Rosh Hashanah. The holiday takes on a special meaning this year, though, as congregations are able to hold services without COVID-19 restrictions.
It was so hard over the last 3 years. Just, yes, we had services, and we even had services in the outside in the backyard under a tent at a certain period of time. But it just gives you a sense of community, and it's just so beautiful. And I think it's the best thing.
What I'm finding this year that is really a theme that seems to be running even through our Shabbat services is a sense of healing. People seem to need to be reassured that things are going to be okay. As a community, we're going to come back and we're going to continue to do this. We're going to be healthy and we're going to be there for one another.
Now, this marks the year 5783 on the Hebrew calendar. Jews also mark the occasion by eating apples and honey, and that symbolizes a sweet new year. And they will also blow the shofar, a hollowed out ram's horn. It's been blown the month leading up to the holiday and will be blown on both days of the holiday. Rabbi Galperin says blowing the shofar is the main commandment for fulfilling the holiday and waking up your soul. Still to come here on CBC Windsor News, clouds and rain on the horizon. Then in the distance, a lot of sunshine. You're not going to want to miss your full weather forecast coming up right after the break. Folks walking through Ojibwe Park will be in for a bit of a surprise. The pond is empty. Normally, there's a nice bit of water at the end of this path. Wow, nothing today, though. The park's biodiversity coordinator says this is not something to be overly worried about. Ojibwe sits on a marsh, and when there's very little rain, the area dries up. It's been quite a few years since it's been this low, and the turtles and the frogs will move along the waterway into the creek, but some of the fish, well, unfortunately, they didn't make it. They'll become food for raccoons and birds. And Dahlia joins us live for a look at our weather. Dahlia, I have to say, I've only ever seen that area of Ojibwe with water, so it's really strange to see it without. But I know we have some rain in the forecast. Maybe we'll start to fill it up a little bit.
That's right. You know, hopefully those fish, I know you said some didn't make it, but hopefully the ones that are still around will. And then, you know, the rest of the habitat will eventually flourish because there is some rain on the way. There is a low pressure system that's moving across the province, and that's what's giving us that rain. There's also a frost advisory in some parts of Ontario, which we'll get to in a bit. Now, there is some sunshine on the way and some warmer temperatures as well. The normal high this time of year is 20 degrees. Right now it's 18 degrees in Windsor. The normal low is usually 10, and right now it's 11. So we're sitting right where we're supposed to be for typical seasonal temperatures for the fall. Currently, it is 14 degrees in Windsor and a little cooler out in Kitchener, 12 degrees. Now, there is some heavy rain and thunderstorms that it's on its way. As you can see, that precipitation activity, and that's because of the low pressure system. Now, also, if you see these blue marks right here, that is a frost advisory near Goderich. So a little cooler out in that part of southwestern Ontario. As you can see here, there is that precipitation activity. We will be seeing that rain throughout the night tonight, and as we head into tomorrow morning, it should start to clear up a bit and mostly cloud coverage for tomorrow, but also there will be rain and a risk of a thunderstorm tomorrow evening at around 6 o'clock. As we head into Wednesday, though, it's mainly going to be cloudy, but like I said, there is some sunshine on the way for those that love the sunshine. But you know, nature needs the water too, so it's good that it's getting that, as we saw why the rain is important. There is also some windy conditions on the way. Winds will be gusting up to 51 kilometers an hour tonight at around 8 o'clock, and it's going to be windy over the next few days as well. We'll see it reaching up to 36 kilometers an hour and even 35 kilometers an hour in Windsor tomorrow night. Now, we can also expect the temperature to drop tonight. It'll drop down to 10 degrees, and there is a risk of a thunderstorm tonight as well. So mostly rainy conditions across southwestern Ontario. And I just want to fast forward here to show you. First of all, the trending thing is the single digits, right, from Tuesday to Friday. But then can we just take a look at that Saturday? It's going to feel a little bit like summer during the day, 21 degrees. So hopefully, you know, the pond gets a little bit of water and it doesn't dry out again by Saturday, but that low pressure system is around for most of tonight and tomorrow.
I have to say, Dahlia, what really caught my eye in your 5-day forecast was Saturday, sunny and 21. I still have some yard work left to do, so I'm glad I won't have to be mowing the grass one final time in a winter jacket.
Exactly. You know, we'll see those autumn colors, but also the sunshine on the way too.
There we go. The best of both worlds. Thanks so much, Dahlia.
Thanks, Jason.
Still to come here on CBC Windsor News, the Windsor International Film Festival gets a game-changing boost. That story is coming up next. A mission to find seaweed brought researchers to the Arctic this month. It's estimated there are about 175 species in the region. The lead scientist calls seaweed a marine superstar because it provides a habitat for ocean creatures and is an important part of the food chain. The researchers hope to determine how climate change is affecting the algae. Chantal Dubuc has more.
This group of scientists have been diving in the frigid waters near Victoria Island, Nunavut, for 5 weeks. They are identifying and collecting seaweed species along with their DNA. They also hope to map and study the ecology of Arctic kelp forests around Cambridge Bay. It's an area that's been rarely studied. Dr. Amanda Savoie studies marine microalgae and is the lead on the project. This is the first time scientists have been able to observe an actual kelp forest in that area.
Kelp forests are a really important part of the coastal marine environment, and so it's really important to study, how are they doing, where can they be found, what kind of fish and invertebrates live in the kelp forest and depend on them for habitat.
Ocean temperatures play a big role in where seaweed grows around the world. As waters warm, the distribution of different seaweed species changes. The Arctic and Antarctic are expected to be the most negatively affected by this. Too much warming could mean there would be no waters cold enough for this species of seaweed to grow.
We don't really know what's going to happen as the water gets too warm, but at some point it will be too warm for certain things that live here. And then things that live further south will slowly be able to move up as the temperature changes. And that will change the marine ecosystem.
Before the expedition, Savoie visited Cambridge Bay to meet with community elders. She says local knowledge have been invaluable to finding diving sites. John Lyle has been their guide. He likes to think of it as an exchange of knowledge.
I'm just happy they're involving us regular people or guides. I just take them diving to places where they want to go and get them over and back safely because I know most of the land around me. I think that's what they want to know, where to dive. And the more divers I get, the more I learn what's in my land.
Dr. Savoie hopes to return next year. She says this year's study will set a baseline where they will be able to compare and see the change for many years to come. Chantal Dubuc, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Pull out your popcorn. The Windsor International Film Festival is right around the corner, and it just received $500,000 from the federal government to put on a show.
If I showed you the amount of text messages or emails received from people saying, when is it back? I'm coming back. I'm taking days off. Can't wait for it to be here. We're hearing it all the time, loud and clear. Our team is at work. We start in a month. We open in a month, so we're very, very excited by this. People want this. This is quality of life. This is economic impact. This is also regional pride, and we're really proud to bring this festival back in a very big way thanks to this support.
The money will be used to expand programming and hire 3 full-time staff. The first time the volunteer-led festival has brought people on. WIF runs from October 27th until November 6th. Personally, I hope Liar Liar gets a special screening, although I don't think that will happen. That's it for CBC Windsor News. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, for news anytime, head to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. And don't forget, we're on social media as well. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report is next. Have a great night.